our village, there was a man everyone knew, but no one truly understood. His name was Thomas Hale, though most people simply called him Tom. If a roof began to leak, they called Tom. If a wagon wheel cracked before market day, they called Tom. If an old widow had no firewood before winter, she would wake to find it stacked neatly beside her door, though no one ever saw who brought it. He never asked for payment. He rarely accepted thanks. He would only nod, wipe his hands on his coat, and say, "A hand is worth more when it is given before it is asked for." In the 1800s, in a small village where everyone knew every birth, every funeral, every debt, and every sorrow, Thomas Hale was the kind of man people depended on so often that they forgot dependence was a gift. They thought he would always be there. Until one morning, before the sun had fully risen, Tom placed a small bundle over his shoulder, looked back at the village one last time, and left for the city. At first, people were angry. Then, they were confused. Then, slowly, they became ashamed, because only after he was gone did they begin to understand how much of their lives had been held together by a man who had never asked for anything in return. The village of Hartwell sat between two low hills and a narrow river that turned silver in the morning light. It was not the sort of place maps cared about. A few farms, a church with a crooked steeple, a blacksmith's shed, a mill, a dozen cottages with smoke rising from their chimneys, and a road that became mud whenever the rain lasted more than a day. Life there was simple, but simple did not mean easy. Winters were long, harvests were uncertain, sickness came without warning, a broken tool could mean hunger, a lost horse could mean ruin. In such places, people survived not because they had much, but because they had each other. And among them, no one gave more of himself than Thomas Hale. He was not rich. He owned no land worth speaking of. His cottage stood at the edge of the village, near the old stone bridge, with a roof he had repaired so many times it looked stitched together by patience. He had broad shoulders, weathered hands, and calm grey eyes that made people feel steadier just by looking at them. He moved slowly, not because he was weak, but because he never seemed in a hurry to be noticed. Every morning, before tending to his own work, he walked through the village with his tools wrapped in cloth and tucked beneath one arm. If he saw a loose fence, he fixed it. If he saw a child struggling with a bucket, he carried it. If he heard coughing through a window, he returned later with herbs, broth, or split wood. He did not announce kindness. He left it behind like footprints. There was old Mrs. Whitcomb, who lived alone after her sons had gone to sea and never returned. Each winter, Tom checked her chimney before the first frost. There was Samuel Reed, the miller, whose temper was sharp but whose back had been bad for years. Tom repaired the mill gate twice and never mentioned the money Samuel still owed him. There was little Annabelle, who walked with a limp after fever took strength from one leg. Tom carved her a small wooden horse with wheels so she could pull it along the road and feel, at least in play, that something moved easily beside her. There was the church bell, which stopped ringing one spring after the rope snapped. Tom climbed the steeple in the rain and fixed it before Sunday. The villagers thanked him, of course, but casually, as people thanked the sun for rising, with appreciation but not wonder. They had grown used to him. That was the first cruelty. Kindness, repeated long enough, begins to look like duty. Tom had once had a family of his own. Few spoke of it anymore, partly out of respect, partly because time makes people uncomfortable with old grief. His wife, Eliza, had died 10 years earlier during a winter fever that took 5 people from Hartwell in 1 month. Their infant son had followed her before spring. After that, something in Tom became quieter, but not harder. He did not close himself off from the village. Instead, he opened himself wider, as though the love that had lost its home inside his own family had to go somewhere. He never remarried, he never complained, he simply worked. Some said helping others kept him from breaking. Others said he had already broken, and kindness was the shape his brokenness had taken. But Tom never explained himself. When the village children asked why he always helped, he would smile faintly and say, "Because someday someone will need to remember that people can." Then came the year of bad harvest. The rains arrived late, then all at once. Wheat rotted in low fields. Potatoes came up small. The river flooded the mill road, and 2 barns lost their roofs, in a storm that seemed to sit above Hartwell for 3 days like a dark animal. Tom worked from dawn until lamplight. He mended, carried, dug, lifted, patched and soothed. By autumn, his own cottage had fallen into worse repair. His garden failed because he had spent too much time saving other people's. His boots split, his coat wore thin. Still he gave. And because he never asked, no one noticed the cost. Not fully. One evening, after helping Samuel Reed move sacks of grain, Tom returned home and found a letter waiting beneath his door. It was from his cousin in London, a man he had not seen since childhood. The letter said there was work in the city. Hard work, but steady. A workshop near the docks needed men who knew tools, timber, iron and patience. The wages were better than anything Hartwell could offer. At first, Tom folded the letter and placed it beside the fire. For 3 nights, he did not answer it. He walked the village as usual. He repaired missus Whitcomb's shutters. He fixed a latch at the schoolhouse. He carried flour to a family whose father had injured his hand. But something had shifted. The village needed him, yes. But need had become a chain, and he was tired in a way sleep could not mend. He had given so much of himself that he no longer knew what remained. On the morning he left, there was no farewell gathering. He told only the vicar, who promised to explain after Tom was gone. Tom did not want tears. He did not want arguments. He knew people would ask him to stay, and he feared he might. So before sunrise, he locked his cottage, placed the key beneath a loose stone near the door, and walked toward the road with a small bundle, his tools, and the same quiet face he wore when mending broken things. At the top of the hill he turned once. Hartwell lay below him in pale mist, its chimneys smoking, its roofs uneven, its people still asleep. He whispered, "Forgive me," though he was not sure whether he was speaking to the village, to Eliza, or to himself. Then he walked on. When Hartwell woke, it felt the absence before it understood it. Mrs. Whitcomb waited for Tom to check her stove, then remembered he had not promised to come. Samuel Reed cursed when a hinge broke at the mill, and no one knew where Tom kept the right tools. At the schoolhouse, the children asked why Mr. Hale had not come to fix the cracked bench. By noon, the news had spread. Tom had gone to London. Some were hurt, some were angry. "After all we gave him," Samuel muttered, though no one could name exactly what they had given. Others said he had become proud, that the city had tempted him, that village life was no longer enough. Only the vicar said nothing. He had watched Tom leave with eyes full of understanding, and he knew a truth the others had not yet learned. Sometimes even the kindest man must leave before people realise he was never theirs to use. London did not welcome Thomas Hale. It swallowed him. The city was larger than anything he had imagined. Smoke-blackened chimneys, carts rattling over stone, horses steaming in the cold, voices shouting from every direction, children running barefoot through alleys, factories breathing soot into the sky. In Hartwell, every face had a name. In London, a man could fall in the street and be stepped around by 10 strangers before one stopped to ask if he lived. Tom found work near the docks in a repair yard where ships, wagons, crates and machines seemed to break faster than men could mend them. The hours were brutal. The air tasted of coal and river mud. The foreman cared only for speed. No one asked where Tom came from. No one cared that he had once been the man everyone knew. In the city, he was only another pair of hands. At first, that hurt him more than he expected. He had not left Hartwell seeking praise, but he discovered how strange it felt to be unseen. In the village, even when people took him for granted, they still recognised him. In London, he was invisible. He rented a small room above a bakery, where heat rose through the floorboards at night, and the smell of bread reminded him painfully of home. He ate alone, worked alone, slept badly. For the first time in years, no one knocked on his door asking for help. No one called his name across a field. No one needed him in the old familiar way. He told himself this was freedom. But freedom, when it first arrived, felt terribly close to loneliness. Then, one evening, as he walked back from the docks, he saw a boy sitting in an alley beside a broken wooden cart. The boy was perhaps 10, thin as a rail, with soot on his cheeks and eyes too old for his face. One wheel had come loose, and beside the cart lay scattered bundles of firewood. People passed, without stopping. Tom almost did too. He was exhausted, his hands ached, he owed nothing to anyone here. But then the boy tried to lift the cart and failed, and Tom heard himself sigh the way he used to sigh in Hartwell when a fence leaned after rain. He knelt beside him. "Hold that steady," he said. The boy stared. "Why?" "Because I only have 2 hands," Tom replied. In 10 minutes the wheel was fixed well enough to roll. The boy looked at him as though he had performed a miracle. "What do I owe you?" he asked. Tom stood, wiped his hands, and said, "Help someone smaller than you when you get the chance." Then he walked away before the boy could answer. That should have been the end of it, but kindness has a way of moving through crowded places faster than gossip. 2 days later, a woman from the bakery asked if Tom could mend a shelf. Then a dock worker asked if he knew anything about a cracked cradle. Then an old man downstairs needed his chair repaired. Tom helped after work, telling himself each time it was only once. But only once became a habit. Soon, people in the building knew his name. Then the street. Then the next street. He became, without meaning to, what he had been in Hartwell, the man who fixed what others could not. But the city changed the shape of his kindness. In Hartwell, he had helped because everyone belonged to everyone. In London, he helped because so many people belonged to no one. Still, there was conflict inside him. A part of him resented how easily Need found him again. Had he crossed miles only to become useful until empty? One cold night, after repairing a widow's window frame, he returned to his room and found his supper gone cold. His wages were small. His body hurt. His own coat still needed mending. He sat on the bed and laughed bitterly. "You fool," he whispered to himself. "You left because you were tired of being needed." For the first time in his life, he decided he would stop. Just for a while. Let others manage. Let the city remain the city. Let broken things stay broken. The next morning, he ignored a loose step in the bakery stairwell. At noon, he refused when a neighbour asked about a leaking pipe. That evening, when the alley boy waved to him, Tom only nodded and kept walking. It felt wrong, but also powerful, like closing a door. For 3 days, he helped no one beyond what he was paid to do. And on the 4th day, the loose stair gave way beneath Mrs. Calder, the baker's wife. She fell hard, twisting her ankle and striking her shoulder against the wall. Tom heard the cry from his room and ran before he could think. He found her at the bottom of the stairs, pale with pain, the broken plank beside her. Shame rose in him so sharply he could barely breathe. He had seen it, he had known. It would have taken him 10 minutes, because he wanted, for once, not to be responsible. Someone had been hurt. Mrs. Calder did not blame him. That made it worse. As he repaired the stair that night, the alley boy came and sat nearby. "You're angry," the boy said. Tom hammered a nail harder than necessary. "I'm tired. My mum says tired people still know who they are." Tom stopped. The words struck him with unexpected force. He looked at the boy, who shrugged as if wisdom had simply fallen from a pocket. That night, Tom understood something he had not understood in Hartwell. Kindness was not the problem. Being used was. Silence was. Giving until nothing remained was. He did not need to stop helping. He needed to learn that a good heart was not a public well for everyone to drain. So he began again, but differently. He helped when he could. He said no when he had to. He taught others instead of doing everything himself. He showed the alley boy how to set a wheel pin. He taught Mrs. Calder's nephew how to mend shelving. He organised men from the boarding house to repair the courtyard together. Slowly, the street changed. Not because Tom fixed everything, but because he reminded people they could fix things together. A place that had once felt cold began to feel, in small ways, human. Doors opened more often. Neighbours learned names. Food was shared. Tools were borrowed and returned. The city did not become a village, but on that one street, beneath soot and noise, something like a village began to grow. Years passed. Tom's hair greyed. His hands became stiffer. He wrote rarely to Hartwell, though he thought of it often. He wondered whether they had forgiven him. He wondered whether the church bell still rang properly. He wondered whether Mrs. Whitcomb had enough firewood, though by now she must have been very old or gone. Then, one spring morning, A letter arrived from the vicar. The handwriting shook. Hartwell had suffered a fire. It began in the mill after a dry wind and spread faster than anyone expected. Several cottages were damaged. The bridge was weakened. No one had died, thank God, but the village was wounded. At the bottom, the vicar had written, "If you ever thought you were no longer needed here, know that you were wrong. But if you cannot come, we will understand." Tom read the letter 3 times. The old ache returned, but it was different now. Not guilt, not obligation, love. He packed his tools the next morning and took the road back. When he reached the hill above Hartwell, the village looked smaller than memory, but dearer than pain. Smoke no longer rose from some chimneys. The mill roof was blackened. The bridge sagged. People gathered when they saw him. Slowly at first, then all at once. Samuel Reed was older, thinner, and leaning on a stick. Mrs. Whitcomb was gone. A young family lived in her cottage now. The children Tom had once helped were grown, with children of their own. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Samuel removed his cap. "Tom," he said, and his voice broke on the name. "We should have thanked you better." Tom looked at the faces before him, ashamed, hopeful, familiar, and felt 20 years of silence loosen in his chest. "Then don't thank me," he said. "Pick up a hammer." They rebuilt together. That was the difference. Tom did not return as the man who would save them alone. He returned as the man who knew better. He organised crews. He taught repairs. He made Samuel's grandson measure beams. He showed young mothers how to brace a fence, boys how to set stone, old men how to guide hands weaker than theirs. The work was slower than if Tom had done it all himself, but stronger because everyone touched it. The bridge rose again. The mill gate swung true. Roofs were patched before rain returned. And in the evenings, after work, people brought food to the churchyard and ate together under lantern light. One night, the vicar found Tom sitting near the rebuilt bridge. "Will you stay?" he asked. Tom looked toward the village, then down the road that led back to London. He thought of the bakery, the alley boy now grown into a carpenter, the street that had learned to help itself. He smiled. "I don't belong to only one place anymore." The vicar nodded. "Few good men do." Tom sat quietly for a while. "I used to think leaving meant abandoning people," he said. "Then I thought staying meant losing myself. I was wrong both times." He looked at his hands, scarred and steady. A man can carry kindness with him, but he must not carry everyone alone. By the end of summer, Hartwell had changed. Not in grand ways. No monument was built for Tom. No song was written. But when Mrs. Bell's fence broke, 3 neighbours came before she asked. When the school roof leaked, the older children helped patch it. When a widow needed wood, it appeared by her door. And this time no one pretended not to know who had brought it, because many had. The village had learned the lesson Tom had spent his life trying to teach. Kindness is strongest when it spreads. When Tom finally left Hartwell again, it was not before sunrise. This time, the whole village came to the road. Samuel Reed shook his hand with both of his. Children pressed small carved toys into his palm. The vicar blessed him. And a little girl, too young to remember the old days, asked, "Are you coming back?" Tom knelt, his knees stiff, and smiled. "When I'm needed," he said. Then he paused and added, "But don't wait for me to do what you can do for each other." He returned to the city before autumn. His room above the bakery was still small. The street was still noisy. The air still carried coal smoke. But it no longer felt like a place that had swallowed him. It felt like another field, another village, another stretch of earth where hands could be useful if the heart remained open and wise. On his table sat 2 things: a wooden horse, carved long ago for a limping girl in Hartwell, and a small note from the alley boy, now a man, that read, "I helped someone smaller than me today." Thomas Hale lived many more years, though not enough for those who loved him. When he died, people came from 2 places to mourn him: villagers from Hartwell and neighbours from London. Some wore patched coats he had mended. Some carried tools he had taught them to use. Some had no story grand enough for history, only small memories: a repaired door, a warm fire, a wheel fixed in rain, a word spoken at the right time. But perhaps that is the truest measure of a life. Not how loudly a name is remembered, but how many quiet acts continue after the person is gone. Years later, in Hartwell, when a child asked who Thomas Hale had been, The old people did not say he was a carpenter, though he was. They did not say he was a villager, though he had been. They did not even say he was kind, though that was true. They said, he was the man who taught us not to wait for good people, but to become them. And that was his legacy. Not the fences he fixed, not the roofs he patched, not the bridge he rebuilt, but the simple truth he left behind. A hand is worth more when it is given before it is asked for, and a heart is strongest when it teaches other hearts to open.